You guys ready? Go!
The Holistic Human Project.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Exploring how to be healthy in the 21st century.
Oh, you don't say.
Breaking down cutting-edge science into bite-sized bits.
Just how I like it.
And delivering it to you fresh.
All right, guys, welcome to today's podcast. We're joined by Dr. Dillon Walker, AMN faculty member today, and also just all-around cool dude. Dillon, I think the first question I want to ask you is, why the nickname Sparkles?
We can thank Jules. What's her last name?
Jules Pello.
Yeah, we can thank her for that.
Yeah.
I don't know where that actually came from. I woke up one morning, walked outside in Thailand, and she's like, "Good morning, Sparkles."
And it just stuck. Of all the cool nicknames you could have had, your last name's Walker and you live in Texas. You could have been Walker Texas Ranger. You could have been Dr. D.
Yeah.
But you got Sparkles.
I might have had something to do with it.
You
kind
did.
of like I was like a hype man for for trying to get that nickname to stick. It didn't take long.
Didn't take long. So we're joined by Dr. Dillon Sparkles Walker, all the way from College Station, Texas. Dave Fleming, obviously, Director of Education here at AMN Academy, and myself, Luke. So thank you for joining us. So we're going to be talking a little bit today about seasonality. Because we're in the kind of depths of winter. What are we today? It's the 28th of January?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
29th?
Yeah.
In the Northern Hemisphere here, I mean, I know everyone in Australia who's listening's the opposite. Those guys are having pretty extreme heat waves at the moment. But for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're kind of in the deepest part of the coldest part of winter, or very close to the coldest part of winter. So we get these kind of comments and questions on social media all the time. Because we're obviously talking about, the different lifestyle aspects of what we teach at AMN Academy, being exposure to sunlight, grounding or earthing, things that affect our circadian rhythm, all that kind of stuff. So, and obviously, this time of year presents with some unique issues, especially if you live in a place like where I live, which is in the Baltics, near the Nordic part of Europe, which is, minus 10 to 15 degrees at this time of year, and, a foot and a half of snow. So we thought it would worth a bit of a conversation. Dillon, Dr. D, Sparkles is our resident expert on all things circadian biology, lifestyle, etc. So buckle in. We're probably going to get, we're trying not to kind of go too deep onto these things, but it might get a little techie. If you want to know more about any of the kind of science behind anything that we're talking about, head to healthcoachcourse.com, where you can, first of all, get certified as an AMN Health holistic health coach, and also kind of dive into these subjects in much more detail. So, Dave, do you want to kind of kick things off with some questions? I know you had a bunch of questions for Dillon.
Yes, I think before we chuck a question out to Sparkles, let's just kind of define what it is that we're discussing here. So, seasonality brings up a lot of topics when it comes to our health. So, what we're really describing is it's the entrainment of our biology, of the human being and our health, to essentially to the motion of the planet. So we're rotating, the planet's rotating, and as it does that, that motion is creating cycles. The movement creates cycles where we are, for a period of time, exposed to sunlight, and a period of time where we're not exposed to sunlight. We're obviously talking about night and daytime. And over the millennia that our biology has been evolving, depending on the story you buy into, on how all that stuff occurred, we have become entrained, our biology has become entrained to specific signals, we call them reference signals, from our environment, which are relative to that movement. Okay. And so it's a case of what I've always said when I start to learn this stuff is when you start to understand this, you start to see that, okay, to achieve even a normal baseline for health from which anything else should then be measured, such as, what you eat and how you exercise and all that kind of stuff, we really need to be in touch with this reference signal, right? So Dillon, just elaborate a little bit on the role of sunlight and our health. And we know the summer is a time that we really need to be getting appropriate levels of sunlight, and that brings up another couple of topics which we'll get into. And in the winter, it's slightly different. So just give us some top of mind thoughts on the role of sunlight and health of the body.
So if we think about when we get the most sun, so going into the end of the spring, summer, obviously in the beginning of fall, the thing that we're getting is essentially the light photon. Okay, so that's the energy particle of the sun. The presence of that on our biology is what's changing things for us, obviously in a good way. From a health standpoint, that photon, now it can range in energy levels, which we call different frequencies. For example, the visible light spectrum. We can have red frequency, we can have blue frequency. These different frequencies, these different photons meet our biology, and they elicit different things in our biology. So this is something that the body is actually looking for to run our endocrine system, to run our metabolism, run essentially every system within the body. It's a signal that we need to get, is that which comes from the sun, basically.
Okay.
Cool. I mean, I've got a little interesting anecdote on that. I have a Siberian Husky, and I just found out the other day that they obviously shed their coat in the summertime. It has nothing to do with the heat and the cold. It's to do with the light, the difference in the length of day. So the longer the day gets, then they start to they call it blowing their coat, but they drop their fur, and then as the days get shorter, their winter coat comes in, which I found really interesting. So it's obviously not just humans who, and it's a hormonal thing that makes that happen. So it's obviously not, human hormones that are entrained with the environment. It's every kind of living creature, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the key point, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, all of the systems of the body require energy. They require an energy source, and one of the primary signals that we get, the primary reference signals we get, is the energy of the sun. And you've mentioned hormones. I mean, and Dillon said it, the sunlight ultimately stimulates the endocrine system. And we're talking about when the retina are exposed to AM sunlight, we're literally stimulating the brain's own pharmacy to start pumping out the relevant neurochemicals and peptides and hormones and all the rest of it to run the show. So we're talking about how it affects your thyroid. We're talking about how it influences the release of growth hormone from the pituitary and all this other kind of stuff. And when you don't know that, you might wear sunglasses all the time habitually when you go outside. If it's bright and sunny, that's blocking to a degree the amount of the energy that your body's taking in. We spend all of our existence majoritively indoors, working in offices, working in front of screens that are pumping a specific frequency of light into the eyes. And that's blue light. We talk about the need to block blue light. I've got my blue light blocker on my screen right now, so it's horrifically orange. But we need to do these things because otherwise you're stimulating the brain, for example, you're telling the brain that it's time to be awake. It's midday, all day, every day, even at nighttime. And in the long term, it's not good for you. It doesn't help, and it doesn't create a baseline for health, which is kind of one of the biggest points we want to make with this environmental stuff. So, Dillon, we've touched on stuff like blue light and photons and things like that. One of the biggest things people associate with sunlight is the synthesis of the infamous vitamin D, vitamin D3 sulfate. So, in the summertime, talk about how we do that. We don't need to be too technical on it, but how do we get that process kicking in? What is it we really need to do in terms of exposure to the sun and being safe to do that? And then what happens in the winter?
Okay. So because the Earth is rotating around the sun, and there's multiple frequencies of photon coming from the sun, we get different types of sunlight throughout the day. So, for example, here in Texas, when I wake up in the morning and go out and the sun rises, the first kind of sunlight that I'm seeing obviously is visible light, but it's also infrared light. And then as the sun begins to rise upon the horizon, when it reaches about 20 degrees at an angle, I start to see UVA, ultraviolet A light. These three lights, essentially, the visible light, the infrared, and the UVA light are what I need to see first before I start getting UVB light, which hits essentially the Earth, or where I'm at, when the sun angle is at 30 degrees off the horizon. So it's visible light, it's infrared, it's UVA and UVB in that sequence. And that's why getting sunlight in the morning is so important, because you get those different frequencies in that order. The infrared and the visible light precondition the human body to receive UVA light. UVA light preconditions the body to get UVB light. And so if you get in that sequence, you're protecting yourself for any harm that you could get from the UVB light. So you're preconditioned to get that. So once you're late morning, for example, so 11, 12, or solar noon, typically around 12:30, depending on where you are, it's the highest intense UVB light, you're actually protected. Now, it would take some days of getting infrared, visible UVA light for you to get really protected from the UVB. So doing this for the first time, there's precautions to doing this correctly. But essentially, getting the different frequencies in that order is what allows you to be protected when you get UVB during the middle of the day. And then if you get adequate amounts of those prerequisite frequencies, then you can stay out as much during the day as you want, and you'll be fine. Now, UVB light is the energy, the photon energy that we need for the skin to make sulfated vitamin D3. And so that's obviously, as the seasons change and we get less UVB, there's some parts of the world, probably where you're at, you're probably not getting any UVB at all right now.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if the sun, because we're really far north, the sun barely gets over 30 degrees over we're just at that angle at this time of year where it's just it rises and it's dusk all day and then it sets.
Right.
So, yeah.
So for those places, I mean, you're not going to make any vitamin D3 at all, any sulfonated vitamin D3 at all.
Yeah, I mean, even if the sun did come up, I mean, you're not going to have much exposed skin, even if you're outside, because it's just freezing. So, yeah. So so in wintertime, what would people have historically done to what's the solution there?
So the trick is that, so nature basically says that because there's little sun exposure, then vitamin D is not an important factor, simply because you're not able to make it. And so so instead of the sunlight that you're getting exposure in the far north, like where Luke, you're at, you get a lot of cold, which means you need to embrace the cold. And this is where we look at a different, what we call regulator of circadian rhythm. Mother Nature provided another switch, essentially, to regulate circadian rhythm, and that's cold. Now, it doesn't mean, like, so I'm in Texas here, it doesn't mean that I can't do cold and get sunlight at the same time. I can. But for those that don't get sunlight, cold is what will run your circadian rhythm. And obviously not getting sun means you're not going to get vitamin D3, so you don't need it. It's not an important factor for you to have because you can't get it.
So if we're getting enough, if we're using the cold and getting cold exposure, like personally, we were just chatting before, like after I go to the gym, I'll go and lay in my backyard in the snow. My neighbors think I'm absolutely insane. You can see Is
that because you're naked?
Mostly naked. Yeah, I'm very close to being naked. There's a family that live next door, and I'm sure they're kind of ushering their kids away from the window.
Here comes the bearded man.
Here comes that weird bearded Australian guy. Move away, kids. Yeah, so I'll do that. I mean, that's fairly extreme. And then in the springtime and the summertime, there's a lake where I live. About 5 minutes walk from my house, and before it ices over, I'll go and I'll swim in the lake. Again, the people who live in my village think I'm absolutely insane. I love it, and it's the same before. You get like that endorphin rush, and it's a real kind of great way to start the day. But so if we're getting cold and we're using cold, vitamin D is an essential. What if people are kind of hesitant about, like, what can they do bar kind of jumping into an icy lake or rolling around in the snow in their backyard?
So it's a process. You can't just, I mean, obviously if you have the cojones to go and jump in an ice lake, by all means, but most people are not going to do that, especially down here in Texas. I try not to talk about that too much because I'll lose clients, but it's a progress, just like getting sunlight, building your tolerance up to sunlight, building your solar callus. For those people that are not adapted to it, with the cold, it's the same thing. Now there are protocols to adapting yourself. If you're feel like you're very sensitive to it, then you can build up your tolerance very gradually. This starts with getting a big bowl of cold water and putting a bunch of ice in it and dunking your face into it and getting used to that. And then once you do that and you feel okay, then get a compression shirt and put it on. Compression shirt collapses your capillaries, so it kind of creates a warming effect. And then put 20 or 30 pounds of ice on your chest, laying on the ground, on your torso. Obviously the ice is in a bag. And do that for up to an hour. And then once you can do that, pull the compression shirt off, put the ice back on your shirt or your chest without the shirt, and go up to an hour. Once you've done that, you can probably get in ice water. You'll be okay. The thing to look for when you're doing this is if whatever portion of the body is getting cold, if it turns white, you need to stop what you're doing immediately and then reevaluate your inflammation and other aspects. As long as your skin temperature or your skin is pinkish red, then you're completely fine to do it. But it's if it turns white, that's a warning to stop and reevaluate things.
Okay, cool.
I got to jump in, man. Jump in on some of these topics because there's a few things. A couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, let's just jump back to the sunlight exposure, graded exposure. Now, I was born in Scotland, which is very northern part of England. I am naturally pasty. Like, I am not. You look at.
I know. Me too, man. Like,
really,
Irish skin.
I'm not. That's me. I'm naturally extremely pasty, and I would have that skin type if I get out in the sun, which was before I knew any of this stuff, which was basically when I went on holiday, to like Spain or something like that from the UK, and just like, pow, burn, instant, just red.
The typical British vacation.
Yeah. I mean, but I didn't know any of this stuff years ago, right? And that's my natural skin tone, and I'm quite freckly as well. So I just want to make the point, it's taken me about 2 years of this graded constant exposure to the sun when it's available, and when it's not, I've got to be honest, if it's really cold, I'm not going out in my undies outside. I'm not doing it. It's just not going to happen. But when the sun's out and it is appropriate for me to be in my backyard and have my shirt off, flexing, and getting that sunlight, it's taken about 2 years of exposure from early in the morning when the sun's up and starting off like late February, start of March, building it up to be able to tolerate the sun in midday and not burn anymore. That's been a long, long process for me. Just wanted to make that point. And obviously I have a skin type that I'm freckly, I'm pasty. You'd probably say I'm higher risk of stuff going wrong. So that's my, it's taken me 2 years to get to the point, and now I'm not particularly worried at all if I go in the sun and I don't burn. The cold exposure side of things, I'm not going to do any of that. I've got to be honest, like that, 20, 30 pounds of ice on my chest. I do enough weird
I know you've
stuff as
done
it
that
is, you know what I mean? Like, and trying to get my wife and kids on board to give me an hour to just lay under ice, I think is probably going to be a little bit of a step too far. But you know, you got to, I think if there's other stuff you can do, right, Dillon? I mean, if you're looking at trying to keep you're trying to deal with inflammation in the body, you're trying to eat in a certain way that provides the nutrition and the substrates to keep inflammation down. You take your time to entrain to the circadian cycles, to light, to magnetism from the earth. And you can do this over a long period of time, that once your circadian rhythm is pretty much in tune, when it comes to winter, you don't necessarily have to start adapting. Everyone doesn't have to adapt to cold, like full on. You'll be fine moving forward, unless you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily like, okay, the protocol is that every single person has to do a severe cold adaptation. I personally don't think that's necessarily the case, or something that most people are going to do, you know, like, I don't think it's necessarily something that's going to happen. I did cold showers and stuff. I did that for quite a while, like really icy cold showers. But again, I do it like when it's hot outside and I'm too hot. It's not like when it's freezing outside and you get in and you're like, oh God, I'm so glad to be inside. I want to go cool off again. You know, it's one of those things that I think is a real hard sell for people in that. So what, just talk on that point for a minute, right? So like, you have to look at let's look at it as a bigger picture in inflammation and in training to light and stuff like that. There's other things we can do inside, like blocking blue light. When it's dark outside, have candlelight inside or low lighting, all these things to try and entrain this circadian rhythm, right? So can you comment on that?
Yeah, so talks that I've given when I'm talking to people about circadian rhythm, because typically that's kind of a foreign word to a lot of people, especially here locally. I like to think of it as a banking account for circadian rhythm. So you have deposits and withdrawals. And so your withdrawals are going to be like your artificial blue light, non-native electromagnetic fields, the bad time process, carbohydrates, stuff like that. Obviously, your deposits are going to be cold, sunlight, grounding, seafood, anything that pulls in electrons to your system, essentially. That's the analogy that I typically use when working with people that have never heard or circadian rhythm. So, yeah, I think when I do talk to people, new clients for the first time, the first aspects that I talk to them about are the withdrawal side of the account, simply because I think they have a really diminishing effect on your circadian rhythm. So the artificial blue lights, any kind of artificial screen that has been made, cell phones, computers, anything, Kindles, anything like that have that artificial blue light. It's going to hit the eye, and especially if you do it at night, it tells the brain that it's 12 o'clock that day, when clearly it's not. The eye, in terms of a concentration basis, is the highest concentrated tissue in the body for DHA, the omega-3 fat. And so the more blue light you get, the more you destroy DHA in the eye. And DHA is needed for a whole host of things in the body, bringing electrons into the system, electricity. So blue light in and of itself is a huge withdrawal to your circadian bank account. Non-native electromagnetic fields, those are essentially everywhere. And there are people that are still still think that they can mitigate this. I've worked with some people to try to eliminate this in their environment. Some people can do it just depending on their living situations. Some people can't. If the livelihood depends on Wi-Fi or internet or being on the phone, then obviously it's difficult to get away from it. So that's where we've come into Pranay Technologies to carry the devices around with us to protect us. Those are huge to circadian rhythm. If you can remove those two things, artificial light, artificial electromagnetic fields, remove that completely, then you're doing huge justice to your circadian rhythm. You're allowing the body to be able to fight its way back to some kind of synchronicity, some synchronization to the environment itself. And that will make anything that you do from a natural standpoint so much more robust. Your ability to adapt, readapt in an expedited fashion back to the sun, back to earthing, will be so much better if you can get rid of the withdrawals, the electron withdrawals, artificial EMF and artificial blue light. Definitely.
That's the key. That's the main message for me, I think, right? There's a lot of things we can do that are actually really easy and simple.
Yeah.
To improve things quite dramatically. And you might not notice change overnight, but these are things that, graded exposure over time, you're going to get an adaptation to.
Especially the Pranintech, the fact that we found this technology that you can actually carry with us to protect us. And it's very robust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because EMF is everywhere, especially something that I've recently discovered or came across. Telluric currents are natural electrical currents in the earth, underneath the surface of the earth. Well, if you're in a highly populated area, so you've got a lot of electrical poles in that area, obviously they have grounds, copper grounds on those poles, where the more of those that you have, the more stray electricity you're getting into the ground, and you're polluting these telluric currents. So if I'm working with someone that lives in a populated city, and I'm asking them to go out and put their bare feet on the ground to earth, that actually may not be a good idea. But if you can go somewhere where you don't see a lot of electrical lines, electrical poles, or you don't see any, you may not even have a cell phone service. That's where you need, that's where you can put your bare feet on the ground and be assured that you're not going to get polluted electrical currents in the ground. And that's something that I pay attention to with clients that I'm recommending. If they live in the city, I'm not going to recommend that.
Right. So I guess that brings us to one of the other questions, similar questions, is that people ask a lot when, the wintertime, and sometimes it's a lot easier, especially if you live, like I live in the middle of the woods, basically, I can go out and just get earthed, no problem. But I mean, in the wintertime, even if I could get through the 1.5 to 2 feet of snow and ice, I'm not going to be able to keep my feet on the ground too long. What's a kind of, can people earth indoors? What would be the strategy? Or if you're in the city and it's not recommended anyway, what would you say?
So, excuse me. Water. Take a bath, sit in water. Water, you're grounding in water. So fill the bathtub full of water. If you could do cold water, fantastic, it'd be even better. But even warm water, you're going to be grounding, getting electrons from the water in the bathtub.
Okay.
Are we allowed rubber duckies in that situation? Is that cool?
By all means. With what you do in the bathtub is your own business. I'm just concerned about getting the water in the bathtub.
That's another show altogether.
Yeah. All right. So I think last thing I kind of wanted to ask, and I think, Dave, you had this on your kind of list of potential questions as well, was we obviously we see a very marked difference in immune function over the kind of winter months. I know I've noticed it in my kids, especially. What direction? In that they seem to get, it seems to the height of flu season, and that kind of probably helped people in the early days before they understood viruses and things like that to kind of associate. That's why it's called cold, right? Like it's associated with the cold months of the year. What is it to do with circadian rhythm, like a disruption in the circadian rhythm because of the fact that they're not getting all of these things? Like what would you kind of think about reduced immune function this time of year? Why is there an influx of seem to be a growth in things like, cold outbreaks, influenza outbreaks, etc.?
We've evolved on this planet with all these different kinds of microbes and parasites and viruses. And we're essentially designed to be able to handle these, on a daily basis. In fact, the body uses certain microorganisms for its immune defenses and other reasons. It's when the immune system is suppressed in a way that these what are typically associates of the immune system of the body become a threat. And so to me, it is, yes, veering away from proper circadian rhythm practices that allow the immune system to compromise, or the immune system becomes a compromise, and the body becomes available to attack. So if it's cold, so we're spending more time inside, most likely around more artificial electromagnetic fields, and not spending enough time outside. And I would venture to guess that if kids were to spend time outside, even in their underwear, regardless of the temperature, I think kids they'll know when to stop and when they don't feel good and when they need to come back in. I think if you did more of that, embrace some of these things that we shy away from, I think you would start to find that these immune issues, the cold symptoms, would start to go away. Food, from the standpoint of seafood, that's the one food that I drive the most in all of my clients and everyone that I speak with. Seafood has some very, very important nutrients that the brain needs, the immune system needs to be able to work correctly, to electrify the body. So if you add in the seafood, you add in the cold, you get away from the EMF, you electrify the body, and this just fuels the immune system so it can work appropriately.
Mm. I got a few tidbits, a couple of cents.
Bring it
on this one. Bring it. There's a couple of things, right? I think when you live somewhere like in the UK and you get, we do get marked seasonal change, right? Now, summers are getting longer. Your lifestyle is much more outside when it can be in the summer, because it can be, and because historically in the UK we're used to a lot of crap weather in terms of rain and just general kind of misery. When it is good summers and when you do get that, everyone's desperate to get outside. There's a general mood enhancement, which is most likely from the exposure of the sunlight and also the associations you have with the fact that, like, it's nice, let's get outside quick, let's have fun outside, because it's not going to last all year. There's this kind of upper and downer thing that happens naturally in people's lives, especially in countries where you have the marked differences in seasons. And when it leaves, when it finishes, and that what's coming is way less fun, there's a general kind of dip, and people you can get a bit lazy. You can get a bit lazy in terms of, you start to hibernate a bit, you want to stay inside. And then, yes, you are more exposed to non-native EMF. If you haven't been taking care of that stuff already, then it might become more of a factor. You might you let your diet slip a bit. These things just generally happen as like moods kind of dip. And then it's all I think it's all like a self-reciprocating kind of situation there for some people. Mm-hmm. But also I think what's also been missed, to jump back to the vitamin D3 sulfate thing, is that, people, if you ask anyone, what's vitamin D for? They go, immune system. And it actually does a whole lot more than that. It's involved in a whole lot more processes than just some regulation or modulation of immune function. But when you can't get that, you've already mentioned that cold is a great thing. That's the stimulus for you. But the other thing that we also need to mention as well, and a winter's a good time to get out and do it, is to get out into nature, literally into forests, all right, into woodland. Because there's a lot of research out there. Luke, we've spoken about this loads of times before with, it's called forest bathing, right? This is research where they took otherwise, healthy individuals who had a high stress lifestyle, and they had certain markers of, some kind of sustained level of inflammation, but they didn't have any particular chronic disease. They weren't sick, but they weren't necessarily healthy, these guys. And they took them out, and they spent over the course of a weekend, 2 days, just walking in the forest, nothing else, just chatting, walking. They weren't earthing at the time. They were just literally around trees. And it totaled to 6 hours over the course of this weekend for the research study. And they showed after that these guys had this marked improvement in immune function, such as in the amount of natural killer cells, T cells, that were flying around in their system, and that they maintained that level, I think, for several months, or had a very slight dip over 7 months. Again, we talk about this in the academy, part of the Holistic Health Coach program. That's something that's really worthwhile knowing, that like if you're thinking, oh, I can't get any vitamin D, my immune system, get out in nature, get around trees, spend time literally in nature, again, around the environment that we've evolved. And when you're around those things, trees, you're literally, your biology is responding and is getting better. And it's something I've even, inverted commas, prescribed to people in terms of, if they're going through something like chemotherapy, for example, or something where they have very low red blood cells and they have, sorts of things going on. You can be like, okay, well, let's think about what we can do. Get out in the forest as often as you can and just walk for as long, an hour, 2-3 times a week. That's going to boost your immune system. And it's totally free and it's natural. If there's other things you could talk about, like you could do hyperbaric chamber stuff, altitude-based stuff that's going to try and drive more oxygenation in the blood, that kind of thing when we're talking about immunity. But I think it's just a point worth making, right? That if you live in a place like the UK is a good example, like you, Luke, out in the sticks in Latvia, you can use nature still to your advantage, and it can boost.
Always, yep.
Hey, always, right? It's the baseline, and there's the point of the whole podcast episode. It's the baseline, and it's what everyone needs to understand, because we are detached from it habitually. And I don't want to give up my iPhone. I don't want to not be able to use Wi-Fi. I love it, but I want to be able to have a normal, healthy, functioning body that I can drive towards positive health, and I think we've got to be aware of these things, and nature's the baseline, and that's what we need to.
We have to be able to recognize the difference.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. And be able to, get back to what nature is already providing for us, and which can make us so much more healthier than what we are. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think on that note, if there's a few resources. So if there's a book Dave was referring to, we've had a conversation about, called Your Brain on Nature. If you want to check that out, it's got all of the science. It's a great book. Eva Cell Hub, I think. MD.
It's behind me somewhere, but
yeah, it's in that bookshelf.
It's on there somewhere.
But definitely worth a read. Also, obviously, our course, the Holistic Health Coach course, where all of this stuff that Dillon and Dave have been talking about, it goes into great detail. But not only the science behind it, but actionable steps, how to coach your clients through these things as well. So check that out at healthcoachcourse.com. And thanks, Dillon Sparkles Walker, for joining us on our inaugural first ever podcast. Really appreciate your time. Dave, catch you later.
Thanks, guys. Cheers, Dillon.
See ya.